Oh, good. Call to order. This Thursday, May 23rd, Oregon City Parks and Recreation Advisory Committee meeting. Starting with our agenda, item 2, introductions on my right.
Bill Daniels.
Troy Bollinger. And Derek Kugel.
Lisa Novak.
Jeff Sargent.
Phil Lewis.
And we have a couple of individuals who will not be joining us tonight, Karen Morey and Mr. Chris Cook. And a couple of others will join us a little bit later. Starting off with item 3 on the agenda, approval of minutes. Has everyone had an opportunity to review our last meeting minutes from April 23rd? Do we have any comments, questions, any clarifications that we need to make?
Move to accept.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
All right, great. So we have a motion to accept the meeting minutes as they are. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed? All right, very good. Moving on to item 4 on our agenda, citizen comments.
Ms. Karen Burek.
Good evening, Karen.
Good evening, Park Advisory Committee members. I'm here tonight to suggest or to request that PRAC send a letter to the Oregon City Commission supporting all of the park projects that are included in the 2019-2020 budget proposal. These park improvements include parks funded by SDCs, that's being the Woods Memorial Park, the Filbert Run Park, the Esplanade Trail at Clackamas Cove, and some land purchases. In addition, there are park improvements and capital improvements included in the maintenance budget, and these include investments to the McLaughlin Promenade parking lot, the Park Place playground, and money for DC Latourette Park and capital investments. So the deferred maintenance investments that are made for DC Latourette Park. I live in the McLaughlin neighborhood, and I have been involved in a committee that has been working on the investments in DC Latourette Park. These investments will improve accessibility to the park. It will allow a curb ramp to be put in to access the street, as well as a ramp within the park. There's been deferred maintenance for over 50 years since the last time there has been investment in that park. There's going to be able to be play equipment for that park, as well as investments to improve the basketball courts. So in addition to the fact that there's these deferred maintenance needs, these investments that are being made at Latourette Park are actually leveraging quite a bit of funds, nearly $100,000 of grants that have been brought in with the assistance of the Latourette Park core team. And it's also leveraging funds that would not have been invested, general funds that would not have been invested in parks otherwise, because the timing is right to be able to make those investments in Latourette Park. So we had several citizens go and talk to the budget committee in support of the Latourette Park investments, and there were some concerns that the city council members had. And I think there was some hesitancy, and they just didn't, they were getting some mixed messages. They did include it in their budget proposal, but I do think support them knowing that PRAC does support all of these investments at this time, and it's just really, personally, I think it's really exciting, the investments that are going to be made over the next 2 years. So with that, I'd ask that you write a letter to the board, to the commission, supporting your parks.
All right, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Do we have any other comments or issues for items not on the agenda?
We have no other public comments at this time.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item 5, presentations. Oregon Kayak. Cindy Bryan and Jenin Rugg, am I saying that right? Thank you.
Should we?
Yes, please. Have a seat.
Excellent.
First, I'd like to say thank you for allowing us to be on your agenda.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, my name is Jen Enrug, this is City Bryan, and we're here to talk about Oregon kayak rental.
So to start off, the city was approached recently by Oregon Kayak Rental to inquire about opportunities within our park system for partnership in order to provide services to the community through a vendor agreement. And so the city has been working with them on that development and putting together the associated paperwork. So we are not all the way through that process, but we are anticipating getting through that process before the summer season starts. And hopefully with PRAC support, we'll move forward with having additional recreational opportunities available, as well as additional revenue opportunities available for the city.
So yes, our business is Oregon Kayak Rental, and this idea came about. Well, Jen and I have been friends for many years. We're mothers, and we like to take our kids out in the summer to enjoy rivers and lakes and other recreational activities. And we've also enjoyed kayaking quite a bit, and find that to be easy, relaxing, and pretty safe and pleasurable for our kids and ourselves. But we found that when going to rivers or lakes, that there weren't any kayak rentals right there. We'd have to drive and go pick one up and bring it back, and we haven't invested in the gear for it. We like to do it, but not want to own it and store it and all that. And we realized, there's a need. It would be great to have the kayak business right there on the site.
Right, so we identified the gap, and we feel like we can deliver that to the community in a safe and fun way. How we intend to do that is through a very mobile business model. So we will have, our customers will engage the rental process through the internet. They'll go online to our website. They'll see everything that we have available right now. We're thinking for tandems, for singles, and 2 stand-up paddle boards. We'll bring it into the park on a trailer. We'll leave the park at the end of the day. It'll be on an auxiliary road, so we'll be out of the way of all of the community members at the park picnicking and whatnot. Obviously, we want to provide a safe, wonderful experience for everybody in the community and people that don't even live in our community. So we'll provide the life vests, the paddles, the safety whistles. And ultimately we want, our target is obviously families like ours who don't want to make the investment in kayaks and gear because they can't store it or they don't use it often enough. And we want to provide a mobile experience and a seasonal experience.
And so we would plan to launch the kayaks away from the boat ramp. They're pretty sturdy, so they can just go over rocks and sand. We also have a kayak dolly that we would use to help make that transport a little easier. We would be respectful of any of the plants and animals around there. The amount of space that we might take up for them, the auxiliary road would be about 30 feet in length, 12 feet width. Again, we want to try to not take over and expand too much into the area so other people have their space and time to enjoy.
We think that Clackamas is the perfect location because there is a pretty wide variety of kayaking experiences there. You have the Clackamas River, the Clackamas Cove, assuming the water's deep enough for them to get inside, and as well as the Willamette River. We know that it's frequented by families all summer long. And as I said, it's definitely going to be a seasonal business. For 2019, we anticipate a July 3rd launch date, and we plan to close it up by September 8th. We would be in the park Wednesday through Sunday from 10 a.m. until 6 p.m. And we did a lot of market research in terms of the rates. We're trying to offer very fair rates. They're on par with any really brick and mortar kayak rental location nearby.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so any questions?
So, I do. So I'm looking at the arrows, and we're looking at the same slide. So you're looking at the cove, launching from the cove or Goat Island?
Oh, no, actually.
Okay.
Right, so the launch point, if you go back one slide, is actually to the left or to the west of the boat ramp. So there's a small trail that goes down in that area. And it just seems like a perfect launch point. Because one thing from my personal experience, what I like to do with my kids is set up a picnic, hang out on the beach all day, get a kayak for an hour or two, but, still anticipate being at the river for most of the day. I don't need the kayak for the full day. I just need it for a little bit for some fun, then take it back. So I imagine in my mind, people are on the beach enjoying the day and they're renting a kayak that we would load into the river at this point, but more likely than not, they would take it off to wherever they're located on the beach.
How about a first-time user? Is it difficult to learn how to do this, or
No.
do you provide instruction?
We would.
Yeah.
Yes.
If somebody felt uncomfortable, we would absolutely provide them with instructions. It's from my, I'm not a professional kayaker, and I know from my first experience, it's very easy to do. And these are recreational kayaks, so they're not going to tip. They're not unsteady. They're actually quite safe.
Yes,
And easy to learn. I mean, what you end up doing is you paddle yourself a little bit and you kind of try to, once you get it down, you get it down, but it does take a minute to kind of figure out which way to
Yeah,
paddle your boat.
My 5-year-old son was able to pick it up really quick as well in the tandem, so, yes.
So, if I may, is there a permit required? Is that one of the reasons why it's in front of us today? And,
No, we
Oh,
were here
actually,
just really to inform you,
yeah.
to let you know that, Phil and we had been discussing this and planned to move forward, but wanted to obviously inform you in case you had any concerns. And there will be permits, yes, but we will acquire all of those on our own through the Oregon Marine Board.
So I have a few questions. And first, I guess my question is for Phil first. Is this done? Is this happening?
No, we have not signed off on paperwork yet. One of the conversations that we had when we were approached was to make sure that it was, something that was known to BRAC and to the general community that this is something we're looking at. It's an opportunity, again, for providing additional recreational opportunities as well as providing additional revenue stream for the city. One of the other things that I'll point out is that Clackamas County Mount Hood Territory Tourism, water access, and highlighting the recreational opportunities on the riverways is something that's really being promoted right now by the tourism industry. And so having additional recreational opportunities at Clackamas Park for kayaking really plays well into that as well.
So again, so it's not complete because the paperwork's not done, but I guess then my next question is it just a matter of paperwork, but other than that, it's done? I mean, the decision's been made, I guess is my question. Right?
Decision is, it seems to make sense to me, but,
Okay.
Part of the conversation is, is there anything that concerns the advisory committee? Is there anything that the group thinks would be something that we should look at as we're putting together the paperwork and the agreement with the private business owner?
Okay, and I have a few questions and comments about that. Have you looked at the Cove as the launch point versus the park?
Yeah, at this point, let's see.
I wanna
where
say
saw-
yes.
I'd say yes, and so where I saw it was just the big gravel parking lot and the trail, and I didn't, yeah.
It doesn't, I don't know if there's enough families picnicking in the Cove. I think they would go in the Cove to kayak around, but I can just tell you from my personal experience, usually you have an established spot. When you go to the river, you kind of set up camp. And I don't think a lot of people are camping in the Cove. I guess they could launch in the Cove and come over, but that still might require them to drive over to the Cove, get the kayak, and then kayak back to where their family is. With this launch point, they don't have to go a great distance to get wherever they're stationed.
My only thought with that is I guess you could say traffic, but traffic with people.
Okay.
I agree, they're not camping over there, they're not picnicking over there. However, I do believe that this could attract people to the park and not just give those that are already there something to do. So I guess the question is, do we attract them to the boat ramp, which we're already having issues there, or do we attract them to some other place?
Okay.
If we're gonna attract them, they're gonna come, if they want the kayaks, they're gonna come where the kayaks are,
right.
right? I mean, within reason, of course. But with everything going on over at the Cove too, I think it's a great opportunity to bring some involvement over there and to bring some recognition to what's happening over there and find a way to maybe move some of our congestion to a little bit different place, but still close enough that they're able to enjoy it. So
Right.
that's my thought, and maybe that's something post phase 2 over there, right? Where there is more activity and there is like a park in place kind of thing.
Yeah.
So that may not be a right now sort of thing, but my thought is putting it right by that boat ramp might be a bit of a challenge. But then a couple of other things. I think it's a great idea, and I probably should have started off with that. I think it's a wonderful idea. Just some concerns about, I guess, making it as effective as possible and as user-friendly as possible. I know if I were to be at the park and I saw a trailer full of kayaks pull up, my first thought is, oh boy, right? There's gonna be a bunch of kids, Boy Scouts, church group, someone's coming with a bunch of kayaks to take over the river. And so I think that can be fixed with signage on the trailer, you know,
Yes.
something that
Or
says,
people
hey,
has-
come rent
Absolutely.
online, or if there is an opportunity to just, hey, I didn't even know this existed, can I just drop in and rent?
Yes, and they can.
Even if it's a quick, you know, you direct them how to get the app, maybe you still don't exchange money or whatever, it's still on the app, but at least there's some instruction.
Yeah.
Just something so that people look at that and they go, wow, there is an opportunity, because my next thought is, I'm gonna go to the other side of the park, right? Let these youth, these kids, these people have their fun, and I'm gonna go away and have my fun. The challenge with that is that I don't get to enjoy what I could have enjoyed because I didn't know, right? And so I think signage, some sort of marketing would help. And so then I look at that and I go, oh, I didn't realize that's an opportunity for me too, not just someone else.
Right,
So
yeah,
I think
no,
that
we
would help.
definitely
Public,
intend
yes.
to have signage because, to your point, we want the same thing you do. I think
Yeah,
we're
right.
completely on the same page. We want it to be as accessible as possible, but we also want them to have the best experience ever because we want it to be a memory. And we want it to be something they want to do over and over again. We want them to tell their friends about it. We really want to be accessible to everyone that we possibly can.
And I think we can bring more positives and get rid of some negatives that will come with it. There's always gonna be some negatives with, you know, you're taking over my favorite fishing spot, or the fishermen come in and they take over my boating spot, or, you know, there's always gonna be someone,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Too many people, I just wanted to come here and take a nap in the park, and there's, you know, other people with me that, like, there's always gonna be something.
There's people having
right?
a good time.
There's people having a good time, and I wanna have a good time by
laughing.
myself, right? So there's always something that, you know, might, but we can't get rid of all of that. But I think it's a great opportunity. I think it is a good way to bring something into the park without the city having to take care of all the, I guess, infrastructure, for lack of a better term, and, you know, man the, you know, with the hourly wage and all that might go into the city taking care of that. I think it's a great opportunity. I just think the marketing piece might help to let people know that it's an option, and maybe, and again, I don't know the logistics of the actual dollars, but maybe some kind of a co-branding, you know, brought to you by Oregon City Parks and Rec. So
Well, we
so the community sees that this is not, we're not just letting some private business walk in here and sell stuff. And because then they'll be calling Phil going, well, I want to do that too, right?
Yeah.
But maybe a co-branding, and so they know that the parks are providing it, but it's also being, it's not just the parks, that there's
Right.
someone else that we're co-oping with. And I think that could help both of us.
Agree.
Yep.
Those are my thoughts.
We did picture having maybe a link on your website to that park so people know that they can reserve kayaks through Oregon Kayak Rental when they go to check out Clackamas Park.
And why did you
Oregon
choose
City.
Oregon City?
Well, when we were looking at this area and seeing, like we were saying, the range of different kayak experience levels, so you could go up the Willamette and the Clackamas, and it's just so peaceful and beautiful, by the way, the Clackamas Park area, and then going into the Cove, and we just saw this as, you know,
And did it
not
take
And
tapped
you-
into.
accessibility, we
Yes.
we were born and raised
Yeah, we
in
raised grew up in
Portland.
Portland, yeah.
And we live near Oregon City. So for us to run, we both have full-time jobs. So for us to run another business, we needed it to be close.
You don't currently live in Oregon City?
We do not live in Oregon
I
City.
agree with you, it is beautiful. And since you're gonna run a business here, I'd advise you to move here.
My brother lives here.
You both should probably live here.
Is that out?
Oh, man.
My brother lives in Oregon City, right off of Holly Lane, yeah.
You both should live here. I think that'd
There
be a
you
great
go.
idea.
Yeah.
I'm a teacher, and so that's helpful in the summer to have this time to
Absolutely.
run the business, so.
Absolutely, good.
I'd like to ask another question if I can.
Please.
Regarding permits, do you see competition coming to you for the same opportunity for somebody else, and you see that as an issue, or are you gonna try to limit, or how do you think you want to?
Yeah, at
mold
this
that?
point, we have obviously not run into that issue, but if it gets to a point where it's, we're getting more additional businesses that are inquiring, we probably would have to move to a RFP kind of process where they would do a bid for providing that service. But yeah, we're not there yet.
Would we be required to do that, or we would just choose to do that?
I think we probably would want to do that in order to provide the appropriate opportunity for the vendor that was going to be on site.
Well, and my suggestion is we don't do that. These folks have created a wonderful opportunity and they've taken the initiative and they've brought it to us. My thought is, we got a partnership. Let's just stick to the partnership and let's be loyal to them like they want to be loyal to us. And you know what? Let them go to another nearby city who shares the same river and have fun. I mean, really, my thought is if we have a partnership, let's be loyal to our partners. And they've come to us, and I think we need to reward that and not a few years down the road say, okay, now you get a bid for this. And of course, I think there needs to be a little bit of oversight just for the community to feel comfortable that the prices that are being charged and the arrangement that is there is certainly, market rate, and that we're not entering into some agreement so that we all get rich. And so the city makes extra money out of the deal, but simply the citizens need to know that we've done our due diligence and this is fair, even though it may not be the cheapest deal in town. I don't know, I just think take care of our people who take care of
We do plan on
us.
having 5-star TripAdvisor
Yes.
and Yelp reviews. That is our goal.
Customer
right?
service,
We
really.
know, yeah, I mean,
And
that's
the location.
our
Well, I also don't
intent.
think we want to put something up to bid every few years and now we got vendors that change and then the relationship starts over and then we've got new things we have to deal with and every partnership looks a little different. And I think our community benefits when a relationship stays in place for a long time and is comfortable, not to mention the oversight required by your department to then manage a new relationship that didn't exist for the last 3 years.
I would agree.
And so my suggestion is we don't open it up. If it's working, if it's reasonable, if the community benefits, we stick with it.
Great.
My thoughts.
Couple of questions.
Go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Derek, that's,
Oh,
okay.
go ahead.
I had one comment or observation. Looking at your exit point or entry point into the river, the only, and this may be moot point after, because there may be changes in the park in the future, but being on the left-hand side of the dock is kind of like crossing traffic with those boats coming in. It's just a concern, with those fishermen coming in. I've seen, I'm well-versed in kayaks and all, and kids and stuff.
Yeah.
I did have a little bit of concern there with, and also fishermen. Some of those guys coming in through there.
So people probably kayak there today. I'm guessing there's probably some kayakers out there during the summer.
There
Where
are.
do they?
Usually around
Usually
the
drop
Goat
in.
Island area. And they go up to the falls. I've seen them go up to the falls. I actually know an excellent launch point, but it's,
We're public record, so you can just share with everybody. Just tell everybody where it is.
I'd be so proud of you.
excellent, but it's not at this juncture, and as was mentioned earlier, maybe in the next phase, it would be more appropriate. But yeah, and it would be onto the Clackamas.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and it's a nice shallow,
Easy
yeah.
That was
entry.
just a concern, going, 'cause, I mean,
Yes,
you've
it's fair.
got
We
6 or 8 kayaks and
Right.
you're kind of across there. You're just looking at, an opportunity of an accident
Yeah.
or,
Yeah.
whereas if you're on the right-hand side, you remove that, whether or not there's
That's a good point.
very good access that way, but.
Right, I think it was difficult to park, and I don't know about the trail down, it's steeper.
It was just very rocky and
Yeah,
at that,
maybe like
maybe
a
it's changed.
safety, maybe like a.
And I know we have a
safety
nice road
briefing.
there because we looked at it yesterday. We decided it is very wide.
Well, and that might be why this spot is decent, at least in my opinion, until the cove is better developed, is simply because there is that
Once we have that road there, yeah.
that road that's not usable, but certainly a trailer could be pulled on and.
Well, now we have a use for it.
And now we have a usable
Right.
road. But it would take it off of the parking lot,
Yeah.
pull it off a little bit.
Right.
To where it's a nice, good surface to launch or something, but I agree, the master plan's gonna change a lot of this too, so we'll have to figure out what that does, but.
But what's
Well,
nice
that goes
about your
here, didn't
business
you?
model is
Exactly,
it's
exactly.
flexible.
Right, we can move
yes.
it, we can expand it, we can have multiple, I mean, it's just really, the sky's the limit in
Flexible,
terms of, yeah, it's
scalable.
very flexible.
Yeah. Jeff, did you have a question?
Kind of piggyback on that a little bit. I'm assuming you're taking on all the liability
Oh, yes.
Yes,
So-
we'll have a $2 million liability policy
Okay.
with an indemnity.
And then somebody gets into the water and decides to go to the Columbia River.
Right?
I mean, do you have safeguards to, I mean, is there a,
As long as they get back on time.
Then they have to be back on time, or they're gonna get charged
They'll
for an
get
additional
charged.
hour. And if they don't bring the kayak back, unfortunately, we will charge them for that. That's really the only leverage we're going to have.
Kind of like renting a bicycle, something like that.
Yeah, and I would say 99% of people follow rules. It's that 1% that, ruins
But the
it
risk
for
of stealing a kayak to hit the Columbia, when you've got my credit card information,
Right, it's,
you kind of just better go buy a kayak. I mean, at the end of the day,
Okay.
do you have a business plan that involves more than just kayaks?
well, we have
Canoes,
2 stand-up
paddleboards?
paddleboards. So we'll
You do have some paddleboards right now?
8 kayaks, 2 stand-up paddleboards.
Okay.
That's our initial plan.
Okay.
Yep, and we'll expand based on the demand and all that. And possibly canoes at some point, but at this point, no.
Our trailer is just not big enough
Yes.
for all of the things we'd like to see on it.
So will we have more discussion on this at a later time, or is this pending?
I think this is our time to discuss. If you feel there's an additional need to discuss further, we can. Our next meeting is the 4th week in June, so that puts us pretty close to when they're wanting to start business operations, and so to allow them opportunity to purchase equipment, start putting together their marketing strategies and all of those things. I would ask at this meeting if there's serious concerns to let me know, otherwise we'll probably start to move forward towards signing an agreement.
Because I would take the opposite position that Troy is about limiting it to one party. I know that our park department needs money, and permits is one way that we can accumulate that, and competition is always a good thing. Not that they wouldn't do well, it's that maybe somebody else has a different kind of idea, or brings in, or maybe all of those kayaks are rented out and there's more people wanting to take more kayaks out. And so I would suggest that you have in mind a policy about whether it's a public park, and to limit it to one vendor is tricky. I know Portland Parks doesn't operate that way. They allow more than if they can all fill the permit requirements, then they're allowed to. And I could use food carts or anything else as an example of that. So it's something to consider before you
Yeah.
form a
Thank you.
policy.
Thank you, Bill. Any other questions or comments? No?
I think it's a great idea.
It is.
Thank you.
Thank
It
you
is.
so much.
It
We're
is.
really looking forward to it. So.
Yeah.
Yes.
Best of luck. Yeah, hope to see you out there.
Yes,
Yeah. I'm
same.
a former canoeist. I haven't tried a kayak, but I may be.
Oh,
your
Now you
customer.
can, right?
Yeah.
And moving to Oregon City is really an option.
Oh, no,
Yeah.
it definitely is
Well.
really an option.
Yes, down the line.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And it's Oregon Kayak. I'm gonna remember that.
Hopefully you'll see it everywhere when you
Yes. Best of luck. All right, moving on to item 6, general business. Item 6A, budget fiscal year 2019-2021.
I've put together a short PowerPoint presentation, and primarily this is just a review of the information that we discussed at the last meeting, but additionally, we had some questions that came in after the last meeting, before the budget committee meeting, and so I wanted to provide an opportunity to review the information, ask additional questions, and if there's anything else that I can answer, I'd be happy to do so. Karen stole a little bit of my thunder with her presentation of the very thorough presentation of the topic, but just really quickly, we had, as you're aware, the budget committee met recently to discuss the proposed budget by the city manager. Budget Committee decided to move forward the proposed budget as presented to the City Commission for consideration, and they are anticipating to receive that on June 19th. So with that, short budget overview, there was a 0 increase in operating materials and services. So this was the budget direction given by the city manager to each of the department heads. There were some minimum increases in personnel expenses for cost of living and employee step increases, but no additional personnel expenses either beyond those areas. There was a continuance of our deferred park maintenance funds. And then, as I stated, the Budget Committee did pass the recommended budget on to the City Commission for consideration and adoption, which is scheduled to happen on June 19th. So some of the commission priorities and ad packages, we added through that process 1 additional FTE full-time equivalent position for park maintenance. Additionally, 1 additional position for facility maintenance. We have put together some funding for public engagement and reporting for the park funding task force. So that task force that we're anticipating kicking off in July, and we'll be putting out requests for folks to join over the next couple of weeks. The Parks and Recreation Master Plan additionally was funded through partially through SDCs and partially through the general fund. The Capital Improvement Plan, CIP update, has been funded, as well as the methodology for the parks system development charges. We have some funding in there for the Parks Public Works Joint Operations Center, and as we stated earlier, the Parks Deferred Maintenance funding was continued, including an additional ad package of $170,000 for DC Ladderette Park. So that was above and beyond what we had historically been allocated for deferred maintenance projects. So for our capital projects, as described, we have $490,000 dedicated for DC Ladderette Park out of our general fund. We have additional funds through the grant opportunities that Karen spoke to earlier. $60,000 towards the playground replacement project at Park Place Park. We're additionally anticipating some enhancement fund grants to help support that. $75,000 towards the McLaughlin Promenade parking lot, so that's the lot adjacent to the VFW hall. $45,000 for park signage, so that's to install park signs at parks across our system. We have many parks that have no park sign at all, and so to let the community know that it is a public park and available for public use, we thought that was important to have that as an amenity at our parks that currently don't have them. $50,000 towards asphalt projects, Park Place Park parking lot and walking paths, cemetery, and then other smaller projects as we have funds available. $50,000 towards asphalt projects at Clackamas Park. That's from a dedicated park donation fund. Those funds come in from the dump station for the RV park. And so when folks use the RV dump station, they give a donation and those funds accumulate, and then we try to use them at Clackamas Park, but sometimes they're used for other projects as well. $75,000 towards the ballroom floor replacement at the Pioneer Center. $40,000 of that is from dedicated donation funds. The other $35,000 is from the general fund, deferred maintenance funds. And then, I should say, excuse me, not deferred maintenance funds, from our general capital outlay funds. And then $10,000 from for the filter sand replacement at the Oregon City Pool, which happens every 8 to 10 years or so.
Would your park signage include park rules?
As of right now, it's primarily just
Identification.
park signs, but we do know that park rules is something that we need to have dedicated signs for those as well. So we have had those conversations. Some parks have a little bit easier locations to hang signs like that at. Others, it's going to take a little bit of work, but yeah.
ask a question about the CIPs?
Yes.
So the $490,000 for DC Latourette Park is spread over more than 2 years?
No, that is this is all of this year is part of the 2-year biennium budget.
And is any of the money going to Latourette Park out of SCC funds?
No,
Is not?
no.
And so this is coming out of general fund money?
170 out of general fund money.
I saw that.
The rest of it is coming out of well, it's all general fund money, but additional general fund money, the rest of it's coming out of our typical capital outlays for parks, as well as our deferred maintenance funds.
So it sounds like DC Latourette Park would be completed by at least the construction project would start this year.
Yeah, so if we can get the timing right and be able to get it out to bid, we could start construction. I don't anticipate having a lot of, it's a project that we probably could do over the winter, whereas some of the other locations where you have a lot of site work and groundwork that needs to happen, working in the rainy season's usually not ideal, but DC Latourette Park, we might be able to actually just work straight through in the winter and then have it available come next spring. But that's something that we'll work with our, we'll look to bid it out as soon as possible and figure out with the selected bid the appropriate timing.
And the asphalt at Clackamat Park, is it specifically where we're putting that effort towards?
Yeah, we're looking at the area between the RV park along that section over towards where it connects with John Storm. So we have a lot of root damage to the walking paths in that area. And the other areas, before we started to put a lot of money into those other areas, it's, if we do additional planning for the park, there might be some allocation of where those trails go, and we didn't want to replace like for like before we had a plan.
Could you go back to the previous screen?
Yeah.
Would you tell me, I should know it, but Parks SCC methodology update, what is that in?
What does that include?
How the money is spent, or what is methodology for SCC?
Yeah, so we have a methodology for collecting SDCs, the amount of money collected, and we have our CIP list of our entire project list of capital projects, and then of that, which projects are SDC eligible. We'll end up with a rather large number. We'll work through, what is feasible, what rates we should be charging for different developments. So whether we are charging, primarily residential development, if we're going to start charging for additional commercial development, those types of things, and the percentages for each of those developments, and it all kind of play into that overall methodology. So that gets vetted through a public process, and then it gets adopted by the city commission.
At budget is usually when that's done?
No, it can be done at any point. Yeah.
All right, thanks.
And so we have additionally, so we have our capital projects, which are primarily funded out of our general funds, and then we have our SDC eligible projects, so paid out of separate funds, which are an impact fee paid by developers in order to provide recreational opportunities for our citizenry. The Tyrone S. Woods Memorial Park Phase 1 development, so this is funded and moving forward to construction in 2020. Filbert Run Park development, so that is a potentially funded with matching grants. And so as I stated in the email that I sent out to the group, we have the matching funds, we applied for the grant. If we're successful with the grant, we'll have a full project and be able to move forward towards development. If we do not receive that grant through Oregon State Parks, then we have a conversation probably as a group. That's the state park grant is our kind of our primary way of developing parks in our system. We've already applied once and we're not successful. It may be a park park that, sometimes they get funded the second year. If we don't get funded after the second year, it's probably the project, and we probably should look at other ways to provide those funds for construction. So that could be that we pay, it's 100% SDC eligible. We could pay for it out of the SDC budget. It would just impact our ability to acquire park land and park deficient areas or complete other SDC eligible projects. So that would be trying to prioritize as a group what we think is important.
Is this a picture of Woods Park?
Correct. Yes.
So is there gonna be a road going through there?
Yeah,
On the
so,
top part?
the next topic on the agenda is Tyrone S. Woods Memorial Park, so I'll go into a little bit more detail with that. But yes, we do have, there's two roads, let's see.
Or we can,
Yeah,
we
so
can
we
move
have
on, I mean, that's,
High School Avenue here along the side. This is Glen Oak Road here to the bottom, and then this is Myers Road up here to the top. And all three roads are developed. Myers Road is developed completely. The half-street improvements along High School Avenue and the half-street improvements along Glen Oak Road are currently not developed and would need to be included in part of the development. But I'll go into a little bit more detail once we get into that next.
I have one more question about SDC money, and is it something that is under public consumption, but is it basically the Cove project with the addition of the new development there, the apartments?
Mm-hmm.
How much SDC money does that bring in? And is most of that being used either for park acquisitions in future areas or in that development of that park to the north?
So one of the things that we are, as part of the development, we are putting a SDC credit towards that development for the promenade expansion. And so they're widening the promenade, they're putting in additional lighting and benches and all kinds of amenities in that area. And so they received a roughly $1 million SDC credit for build out of those amenities. The full build out for phase 2 and 3, I think, is somewhere in the 1.7-ish million for SDCs paid to parks. And so we have a net 700,000 in SDCs that's coming in to that project that can be used for new park development or acquisition. We also additionally have, as we've discussed a little bit previously, the North Park there that is currently undeveloped. And so at some point we'll need to do some planning on that and then through to construction.
In our SDC reserve, currently the balance of that is approximately,
we have, with the current budget, it's around $3 million in reserves with the current budget.
okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I got a quick question on, and just maybe you can fill my ignorance here. Is it commonplace on the park budget that there's usually, Laureate Park, or is that, am I saying it right? Ladderette, is obviously taking up the chunk of the money. Now, is that commonplace on a 2-year budget, one big project, or?
We have not typically used funds in that way for the biennium budget in such a large project. I think the problem we run into, to Bill's point, is the SDC eligible park projects and non-SDC eligible park projects. So we have funding to develop parks. We don't necessarily have funding to
No, I
repair.
understand, yeah, I'm just,
Yeah.
not seeing the history
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
of how it works, I was just wondering, is this common, is this,
One large project.
Mm-hmm.
yeah.
Yeah, and usually we will have probably one larger project than others. As an example, last year we did a pool project where we replaced the concrete and we also did some repair work on the beams that support the roof structure, and so that was a rather large, that was a $200,000 and something project. But, you know, the scale, it is a little bit larger than usual, but not atypical, I guess.
You have like a 5-year or 10-year CIP plan, or?
We currently do not.
Okay.
Yeah, and so that is something that we probably should really develop, and we really don't have. I think the issue that we run into is that we're basically running year to year with our funding allocation, and so we have a very minimal capital budget, and then we have luckily received additional deferred maintenance funds. But we don't have a stable level of capital funds available to us that we can really plan out regularly. And so a lot of times it's, you know, putting out fires, as it were, with whatever project is most pressing as we're going through the budget process. And we don't really have that opportunity to plan as much as we would like to. Questions? So I'd be happy to answer any other questions that you may have. But, you know, I realize there's, you know, I had a nice conversation with Lisa around being a little bit more clear with the presentations, and so trying to provide a visual for as many of the presentations as possible moving forward, I think would probably be helpful. So I'll commit to doing that, and if you have questions or concerns or ways that I can present information that you think would be easier, please feel free to reach out and let me know.
All right, thank you, Phil.
Yep.
Yeah, very informative. I think Doug would appreciate that. I'd get a kick out of it. All right, we're moving on to 6B, correct? Yes, as I see on my screen.
So this is an update on the Tyrone Woods Memorial Park development. Just a little background first. Tyrone's Woods Memorial Park is in the Caulfield neighborhood near the Oregon City High School. It's just over 9 acres in size. Gives you a nice overview of the adjacency to the bus barn just to the north and the soccer fields just to the east. And I guess on this slide is probably a good slide for you, Derek, that you were asking about earlier about the road development. You'll notice the Myers Road just to the north is a nice wide with sidewalks and has all the additional pieces there. High School Avenue, which is just here to the right, or to
Now, is that gonna go through?
High School Avenue or
No,
Myers?
Myers Road.
Yeah, so Myers
Eventually.
Road is currently in.
That's what I thought I saw that on the Beaver Creek
Mm-hmm.
development plan, so.
Yeah, so
But,
they just closed on bidding, and I think they're anticipating going into construction this next. Actually, I think they're trying to go into construction this summer, so could be as quick as this summer.
So is that private property right there, that house, is that coming down, or is that staying?
We're looking at down here.
Lower left.
No, outside of that,
The B and B, right?
right next to the B&B,
Oh, here?
the other ones, yeah, all that in there,
Yeah,
with the
there's-
extension.
Yeah, the extension will come through and then up. I don't think there's any structures here that would be impacted.
And I see the college is doing a lot of work, is that gonna, I mean, it's not gonna stop that, but how is it gonna be effective?
Yeah, the college is helping to support the project. There'll be transportation into their new transportation facility on the campus off of Myers Road. And so they've been involved in the planning and everything for the Myers Road extension. So they're very supportive. So this is the full build out of the park. So the entire 9 acres, the master plan calls for the existing house to be used as a community space. Additionally, we have called out for a park host, improvements to the wetlands and natural areas, have some boardwalks going through that space. There is the natural resource overlay district through that area, so the Caulfield Creek section, and then there is a delineated wetland which is in this area as well, which will stay and will make habitat improvements. The next slide shows the phase 1 development. And so you'll notice that we have kind of a improvement area through here. And so we're anticipating not having to do the roadway improvements along Glen Oak Avenue, but we will have to do the roadway improvements along High School Avenue. So we'll have full sidewalks, planting strip, bike lane parking along High School Avenue there. The one piece which is not on here but was actually included in the phase 1 development is we do have a skate spot that's called out for in this general area. We have multi-use courts, pickleball courts, the trails running through, a nature play elements. We'll have a picnic shelter, walking paths, open lawn area, and then our first fenced dog park in our park system. Additionally, this is the older layout. We actually haven't updated. I pulled the wrong one, but we have the memorial for Tyrone Woods called out to be somewhere in this area generally. So there'll be a flagpole here, which will allow, we met with the VFW and park staff to determine the best location for the memorial in the park. So it'll get a lot of eyes on it, being close to the entrance into the park. Additionally, with the flagpole, allow us opportunities to host events in the open lawn area for Memorial Day, Veterans Day, those types of things, if and when we have those opportunities.
Will that flag be flown every day? Or just for those events?
It'll be lit and
It'll be lit, so
flown.
not up and down, but lit?
It'll be lit and stay up. It will, as with, I don't think we have any unlit flag poles in our system right now that we use. We do have a flag pole at Atkinson Park, I think, is our only park with a pole that's not lit. We currently don't have a flag on it. It's just prohibitive for staffing to raise it and lower it every day.
And then the other question I have is the parking. Is that public parking for any use, or is it going to be designated parking? And then enforced?
Yeah, similar to our other parks. It's open and available for the public use during operational hours. So at 10 p.m., nobody can be in the park, and they can be.
I think it should be. I mean, you're going to have a lot of use of that parking just for the soccer and lacrosse across the street, which I think is great because that's community use as well.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So I think it should be.
And we've had conversations with the school district around joint use of facilities with the bus barn. They have quite a bit of parking across the street. So if and when we do have events at the park, to be able to have the relationship there with that. And then we'll have a ton of street parking along High School Avenue as well. So the budget and project phasing, so we have, again, it's a roughly $2.5 million project. About 500,000 of it is in grant funds, 200,000 of it is in Park SDC funds. The RFP is out, anticipated to close on June 4th. We're anticipating entering into a contract on June 20th. And then moving forward with construction documents and permitting. We will do some site work, vegetation clearing, removing hazard trees during the fall season, but most of the construction will start in 2020 in late winter, early spring, with a park completion scheduled for September of 2020 approximately.
Would you go back to the previous slide for just a minute, please?
Yes.
I was trying to, so I didn't see it, but we're looking at play swings in there or any kind of facility such as that?
Yeah, the nature play area is in here
Oh, I see it, yes.
and has not been
Nature play.
fully, this is a conceptual design. So we'll have an opportunity at the 30% design set to have a couple of different options for what we'd like to see in the nature play areas. And so part of the design RFP is that we'll have 2 or 3 different options to choose from.
Will the pathways be lit?
That is an excellent question. I don't believe we have lighting called out along the pathways, but I will follow up.
And on the, you said that's, of course it is, the first fenced dog park that is being
Correct.
installed in Oregon City, and I am quite familiar with fenced and unfenced dog parks, and that area will get worn out quickly if it's turf, regular turf. And so there's, the one option is that you look at something other than grass,
Like AstroTurf, I've
for
seen that,
example.
and
It's expensive, but it's basically a one-time unless you guys gonna vandalize it, but I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sure that,
So we'll be looking at those options. The other thing that we've had conversations around and why we acquired the property on Claremont Way was that we probably will need a secondary fenced dog park in our system, and probably primary dog park, because a 1 acre, or actually less than 1 acre dog park will not serve our entire community. And so we need to have, for maintenance reasons, to be able to close and maintain this, we'll need to have a secondary fenced area. Because once folks get used to using a fenced dog park, they're not gonna be very happy if they don't have an opportunity to use the fenced dog park.
Because I'm sure they'll stop using the other parks that are not designated dog parks and only come to this one.
Exactly.
of
Yes.
course.
Of course. Suggestion along the lines, and I guess maybe it's not really the nature play area, but just something in the park. And maybe we're too late in the process for this, but I think it would be great if Tyrone Wood's family were contacted. And in the planning of this, or in some of the pieces that are here, would be something that is memorable for him. Something in his life that he did, hobbies that he liked, something that might kind of put, rather than just the name, put the stamp on the park. And again, that may not be possible. I mean, I don't know much about his personal life, but if he was a rock climber, that probably wouldn't fit here, right?
Yeah.
But something along those lines, I think would be kind of nice,
Yeah, that's.
if possible.
Yeah, that's not a,
Maybe the nature play area would be something that could be incorporated, but maybe not, I don't know.
yeah. We have been in contact with his family. Cheryl, his mother, who's been to a couple of
Yep.
our meetings, has been very gracious with her time and willing to work with us on any of our requests. So, I think we can, maybe try to find a small piece to,
A favorite
finance
childhood
and-
game, or just anything
Yeah.
that would just kind of put a stamp on it.
Yeah, I like that.
Be kind of nice.
suggestion. Yeah, that's nice.
So,
and are native trees being considered as the primary trees being planted in that park?
We have several trees on site that will be maintained. There is, some rather large firs, some oak, some ash that are on site.
Dogwoods,
that
for
will-
example, but some of the flowering trees that are native that maybe are more tolerant to the conditions we're going to be going through here.
Yeah, we haven't gotten to that level of detail.
we're adding
yet,
cottonwood, right?
but- Yeah.
And no
Yeah,
cotton-
no cottonwoods.
Private street.
I think Jonathan might quit if we.
Is there running water in the dog park at all? Because I see there's a portable restroom, but there's no indication, and many dog parks will have some sort of running water
Yeah.
for the dogs to drink out of or play in.
That's a good suggestion, a good point, yeah. The restroom facility, was something that we removed for financial reasons, and so, we will have irrigation on site there, so we have not gotten to that level of detail, but that's an excellent suggestion to make sure that we have,
Okay. Because
water for-
irrigation, it's not potable water, and I'm assuming with pets, you need
oh,
potable
yeah,
water.
yeah, for
With
sure.
proper backflow,
But could
you
it
can
be?
separate them, yes.
I mean, could it be, would that, using that, filtering it somehow, I'm not a dog person, I don't know, but somehow using it for both purposes rather than, you know, a system to bring water in, but somehow using what's there?
Separate
Trying to remember if
spigot
we have
off of that
I
line.
think we have a drinking fountain on
Okay,
site.
so there must be.
Okay, so there's already,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah.
And then another dog park question, obviously. We have
Yes.
dogs. And with that, in terms of shade, I see that there's, one tree that's within, you know, the designated area, and then there's some over on the other end, over by the nature play, but it doesn't look like those extend into it. And I know this is just a rendering, like a big picture idea of it,
Yeah.
but, I'd like to make the suggestion of more shade. Would be great, because that can be a hot part of, the property, having been in soccer and lacrosse games across the street. Yeah, that would be fantastic, and then any physical amenities, like picnic tables, would be fantastic
In the park, in the dog area?
in the dog park, because that way, families and dog owners, they sit, and even the one little table that's over, is that Wesley Lynn Park, I mean, people are always,
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, using that.
it doesn't have to be anything fancy.
Yeah, I think of Stanford, they have, yeah, they have a bench or two there.
So again, thank you, questions. I do have one, so as I spoke to earlier, we have the RFP is out and will close on the 4th. We have a very tight turnaround for review and notification back to the applicants, but I was wondering if there is interest from anyone on PrAC that would like to sit on the review committee to review the proposals for construction documents design.
How much time do you anticipate it being? How many proposals do you anticipate?
Yeah, I was gonna say, it depends on how many we get. We've received, I know I'm sure we probably will have at least 3. We've received requests for additional information from probably 6. So, yeah, there could be up to 6.
What does this involve?
Half a dozen.
So you would review the proposals and go through, we have a scoring sheet that you would use to evaluate the different criteria of the proposal, their qualifications, similar projects that they've completed, their specific proposal, how they are anticipating going about completing the work, those types of things.
Sign me up.
So
Yeah.
we've got Jeff. Anyone else interested?
I think we probably try to keep it to 1 if possible. The smaller group, the better. I mean, we already have, so I'll say, myself, the assistant parks director, the park operations manager, a planner from the planning department, and then probably 1 more, and that's, you don't want to have probably
Too
more
many.
than, yeah.
Too many cooks.
Well, if Jeff's willing, I'm all for it.
I can be an alternate, in case you win the lottery and good.
Way less.
Yeah, could be. That's great. Thank you,
Okay,
gentlemen.
Great, perfect, thank you. And again, we're proposing to move forward to get approval from the city commission for the contract on June 19th, and then enter into a contract on the 20th, and then start moving forward.
Great, that's good news.
Yeah.
Okay, moving on, item 6C, Willamette Falls Legacy Project.
So we have a little bit of an update on the Willamette Falls, not a lot of brand new information, but just things for the group to think about. We do have our PrAC tour scheduled for June 21st. So for those of you who have not RSVP'd and would still like to attend, please let me know and I'll add you to the list. It's scheduled for that afternoon at 1 o'clock. We are looking at doing additional public tours, tentatively scheduled for May 30th through June 1st. So that's a Thursday, Friday, Saturday. little bit more low-key and probably a little bit less opportunity for those tours just because of staff availability. It's kind of hard to get folks together. It's pretty large commitment as far as time for all the folks that can give tours on those days. So again, for the general public, for all the thousands of millions of people that are watching us online, I definitely recommend signing up on the email list through the Willamette Falls Legacy Project site, and they send that out as soon as it becomes available for registration. They fill very quickly. We do have our design team on board, and they've been working on putting together the documents for the initial design. The CMGC construction manager, general contractor, has closed the proposals. We have graded them, and we have selected a first choice for CMGC. It's not been announced yet, but should be in the next couple of weeks, assuming we come to terms with the contractor. And then the other thing that we're working on right now, particularly heavy on the Oregon City Parks side of the house, is the programming contract. So working with Biederman Redevelopment Ventures on putting together a strategy for operation and maintenance of the property. We're anticipating a June 19th commission presentation, and so I would, invite members of PRAC to attend that. And looking at this point, they're putting together, they're digging through all of the community engagement processes that have happened to date, all of the things that people have said that they want to be able to do on site, all of the design elements and how that plays into how it is operated and maintained. And they're looking at, how to engage with local service providers, as well as how that relates to staff and developing a service delivery methodology for that location. So it's probably going to be a 6 to 9 month process of kind of going through all of those steps. The June 19th meeting is really just an introduction to tell, the commission, this is who we are, this is what we do, and this will be the process. So not a lot of new information beyond probably what I just gave you the brief introduction on, but if you are interested and available to attend that day, that would be a nice day to get additional information.
Will PRAC be involved like later on in terms of having any, like Will Biederman, I've worked with them before. Will they be presenting at all here, or is it more Willamette Falls Legacy in terms of providing input and recommendations?
Yeah, they're working very closely with the Willamette Falls Trust, is the contract holder for that. And so they're working with Oregon City, so our planning department and Parks and Recreation department on, at this point, it's been, first steps, trying to get a sense of what we need. And so we'll have a draft version that will come out. We'll have obviously presented to PRAC and then to the City Commission on, with their first view of what they see, what the capacity is, and what their recommendations are. And then at that point, we'll have an opportunity to give feedback and provide additional detail. But yeah, if you have, I think a lot of you have had participated in the public involvement processes. If you have specific things that you are really adamant about that you think have not been vetted, or as we're going through and engaging those additional processes as far as the presentation to the commission or presentation to PRAC, you will have that opportunity. But yeah, if there's something that's that you'd really like to have included, or comments, let me know.
Okay, great. Item 6E on the agenda, the West Good Neighbor Agreement.
I think we skipped over the Clackamas Park.
Oh, gosh, we did. Thank you. Too fast for my Clackamas Park.
And I think everyone was there yesterday, and so this will be a lot of review. And maybe I can just run through it super quickly. I'm not sure if there'll be any questions, but there you go. So Clackamas Park, again, as we talked about on our site visit yesterday, we have a commission goal to revisit a portion of the waterfront master plan, which includes Clackamas Park. The primary pieces being the boat ramp, location, the RV park, and the city-owned properties across the street. So this is the map that we handed out yesterday and talked a little bit about. The boat ramp, so again, how can we best incorporate the boat ramp into the overall design of the park to serve all users? As we talked about, the current location is not ideal and will continue to be damaged by water events, and so looking at options. These were the 4 options that were included in the original recommendation from the Oregon State Marine Board and their hydrologist to move the boat ramp approximately 350 feet downriver. There were 2 original versions that were offered, option 1 and option 2. I think a lot of us are more inclined to have the angled boat ramp in that current location, but you'll notice the kind of one way in, one way out entrance that we discussed in those 2 options. They did create a third option as well, and then eventually their preferred option, which had the additional circle through the park, and that does take up a lot of the green space within the footprint of the park. And so the direction that we received from commission and the as well as PrAC not being happy with the loss of green space in Clackamas Park, went back to the Marine Board and said this is something that will not be supported. What are our options? They have hired a consultant, a hydrologist, to come in and look at moving it approximately 150 feet downriver, which is approximately where we were standing yesterday during our site visit. And so hopefully we're anticipating hearing back on that report by the end of this month. And then by our June meeting, we should be able to have a presentation from the consultant to speak to the reasons if this is a feasible option or if we need to look at other alternatives. But at this point, we're just kind of waiting. The other option of the other components of the master plan that we discussed, should we continue to operate an RV park at Clackamas Park? It does make revenue. It does is a little bit of a headache, especially in its current location. A lot of staff time and resources to set it up and have it flood and take it down, and the electrical and utilities that are there. And so, should we move it to higher water? Should we move it across the street to the overflow parking area? We do, again, $137,000 in 2018 revenues. Direct expenses were $42,200, and so little under $100,000 in net revenue, which is not bad, and definitely provides an opportunity that is not provided in other areas in our town.
Question on that.
Yeah.
You said direct cost only. I assume that does not include employee time to set up and take down. Do you have an estimate of what the total cost, whether it's absorbed or not, would be for that, just the RV portion? Or a speculation of any kind?
No, I would hate to.
I mean, how many hours does it take to set that up and take down every year?
Quite a few hours. And
100 man hours?
And actually, I can bring back that. I can bring back, I think, we ran these numbers a while ago, and I am trying to remember if we actually included, we have a tracking system for some staff time, and I'm trying to remember if this was included in that, which it could have been, but it also means that those are things directly that they are signing in for the RV park specifically. So I would imagine it's not all of our staff time.
Well, and Jonathan may have an idea of how many other hours that maybe are not
Yeah.
in that system.
And that doesn't include any of his hours, and it doesn't include
Sure.
any of the, the hiring of park hosts and dealing with the
Well,
truck
and I'm not,
users.
and I'm not even suggesting we necessarily at this point don't do it. I just think it would be helpful to know. I mean, $100,000 or near is a good amount. At the same
Yeah.
time, is that really 80,000 or is it really 20,000 at the end of the day, right?
Yeah.
I think
Yeah.
that would help us make, a decision, as much as it's not our decision here, but a decision to be made on if we move it, where to move it, if we have it, whatever.
Yep.
How many of our parks make anything?
Oh, it's none.
So it's only one.
Yeah.
So, I mean,
Yeah, I mean, it's,
I did have a question on, as far as creating a master plan for this park, which it was mentioned that the state and the Marine Board would pick up 50 to 75%, I believe I heard, on,
For
is
the-
that just for the ramp?
just for the ramp.
Okay.
Yeah, well, the ramp and additional facilities for boaters. So if, the parking lots to get into where the ramp is, all of those unique site improvements for the design that we saw.
A
So,
restroom?
so this project, anything that would cost to put together this project, in theory, they would support half to 75% of that,
Restroom facilities if needed in there?
if needed, yeah.
If we needed to move the horseshoe pits to the middle of that so they could play when they're done boating, they could include that too, right?
No, we can always ask.
If they want to play pickleball or something, we could.
Why are they so adamant about being on the Clackamas side? Has that been made a point? Why
For
they-
what, well, I guess we have,
And my follow-up actually question is, has there been a discussion that they would improve the sport craft landing or sport craft ramp? Widening it, for example, or at least making it more accessible? We own all that waterfront. I think we
Correct.
own a couple feet off of all the way up and down. Sportcraft is leasing the.
Yep.
So I'm just curious, and that doesn't have a substantial restroom there anyway. There's just porta potties they put in there.
Yeah.
Part of the year. So was there ever a conversation about maybe this isn't gonna work on the Clackamas side, but would you put money towards improving that sportcraft landing?
we have not had those direct conversations. There's definitely some site constraints there as far as just the width and the availability of, parking in that location. It's already a double, loading, ramp in that location.
And you are talking about possibly mitigating more space for that with the bridge work and with ODOT maybe giving us more land to add parking or at least space to that area?
Yeah, so we would have additional overflow parking, across from John Storm Park, so, but I think that, that's really to service the users that are already there. The parking during peak times is already pretty full. But yeah, those are opportunities. I have not had those conversations with them. The moving it on to the Willamette side, we have not done any hydrology studies on the Willamette near Clackamas Park, so that would be an additional expense. The Willamette sees a lot more debris coming down river, and so we'd have to put some type of boom out there, similar to what we have on the dock at John Storm, probably, and then we would have to put the additional facilities near that area, so building out parking lot, building out restroom facilities. It would just be a substantial investment, and more than likely, it would not be supported by the permitting agencies, Department of State Lands and Army Corps of Engineers. And so if we do go that route, it would be a lot of permitting headache and more than likely not financially funded by anyone other than the city. So, spending $2+ million or $3 million on a ramp on that side out of the city's funds instead of other park projects.
You just don't, you feel that they wouldn't be interested in putting additional money into that site than at Sportcraft? Is that?
Oh, at Sportcraft? Yeah, we haven't had those conversations.
No,
Yeah, but we
I mean,
could.
that might be a fallback position if the commission says, no, we're not gonna take up any more grass, we're not putting a boat ramp in at all, would they? Maybe that would be a fallback request, and see what if it was something that they were interested in doing, if they are wanting to put in another additional boat ramp somewhere in that location.
Yeah, I just, I would struggle with the additional capacity that would be created there versus the loss of capacity. It would be substantial. I mean, there probably are some efficiencies and some additional things that we could do at Sportcraft to include the usability, to improve the usability, but probably the loss of the ramp at Clackamas would far outweigh that, and whatever improvements we probably could make at Sportcraft, I would assume. But yeah, again, we haven't had those conversations, but we could.
Question about the RV park and possible relocating, because the current location is 2.2 acres. The overflow lot, is the overflow lot just the area that's being used, or does it extend towards McDonald's?
Yeah, so here's the overflow lot. It is
So it
2.2
does-
acres
okay.
combined, and goes, right up to where the tree line is next to McDonald's.
So the overflow lot's 2.2 acres and the existing RV lot is 2.2 acres? How convenient.
I know, right?
Okay, all right, so physically similar
Yeah.
space. Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
the one nice thing, one of the things Jonathan brought up is, there would be a challenge as far as pedestrian access across Clackamas Drive. You have a corner there, and but we're using it right now as overflow parking and people walking back and forth anyway. So probably providing some kind of pedestrian improvement at some point would be something we probably should look at. There is a walking path that comes right here, it comes around and then in theory could come across. Whether or not the corner here, you would have enough opportunity to see someone there and stop. I don't know, I'm not a traffic engineer, but I'm sure we could work with our public works department on trying to figure out if that was something that we could look at.
Well,
Oh, sorry. In terms of utilities, like in terms of getting electricity and water, whatever base utilities, is that a possibility to the overflow lot?
I have not run I would assume that there's, I know for a fact that all the they should all be there because we have all the same utilities provided to the park, and McDonald's is right there and has service, so I'm assuming there's probably sewer and water and all of that within Clackamas Drive.
So then theoretically, since this space has never flooded before, you could potentially bring in more revenue because you wouldn't have to shut it down as you've had to do in pieces over the years. So that amount of revenue brought in with potentially less staff time, once it gets established in terms of repair, then there would be greater revenue
Opportunity.
option. Okay.
Yeah.
well, and our fees, I think, on RV sites are under market as well.
I was just going to
Which,
say that. Do we-
being as though it's an urban RV park, that I think is gonna drop the price a little bit. So I'm not suggesting we're well below, but we're a little below. But we could also, I think, run pedestrian crossing on the riverside to connect to the walking path, which would be nice and convenient as well. Do you see what I'm talking about there? The one that goes down to Johnstone Park? Coming across Clackamas Drive?
It's over here.
No, down right there. Yep, like come right from the corner of the upper of the overflow lot. If we made that the RV, right, and come over there somewhere. So just some crossing right there.
It's kind of a steep section right there, but we might be able to.
Or come back a little bit
Yeah.
somehow and maybe even,
Zigzag it around. Yeah.
maybe even make a path to McDonald's, because when you're camping, what else do you want to do, right?
Yeah.
Just go over to McDonald's, that's right.
You're smelling those fries all night.
Fries and fish.
So again, this was just an opportunity to speak to kind of where we're at. We're anticipating getting the report back from the Oregon State Marine Board within the month, and we will be coming back at a future meeting with more information and an opportunity to hopefully make a recommendation at that point to the city commission to move forward in whatever way we decide to move forward, so.
Great.
Will we be using a professional for any other part of Clackamat Park besides the boat ramp issue?
That's a good question, because we had anticipated hiring a firm to do a public engagement process for a master plan, for a full master plan. The direction we received from the commission when we brought this information to them in March was that they did not want another plan. They just wanted to know what we should be doing with the boat ramp. They wanted a solution to the boat ramp. I can appreciate that. I know that we have other needs at the park that are not related to the boat ramp, and I guess I would ask this committee if maybe to use your voice in advocating for, you know, it's not just the boat ramp. We really need to look at how we're utilizing this space. It's, you know, 25 acres of riverfront property that we are maintaining, and we'll get into it on the next the next topic. These are rolling right into each other, but we have opportunities to make some improvements, and we probably should have some type of plan to move us towards those improvements that would be supported by the general public.
So we should do that in the form of a motion at a different meeting, have another discussion, and have that, if we feel like we want to move that forward to commission.
Yeah, and
There's no
you know,
hurry on that, of course, right at the moment, but
and I think we'll have more information once we get the report back from the Marine Board, and at that point, we'll kind of know, I mean, that's a pretty substantial piece, and once we have that information, that'll probably play into what else we could do on the site, but I think it shouldn't be just staff making that decision of, you know, we're gonna put in some paths here and we're gonna throw in, you know, a shelter there and say that we're done. And I know that this group represents the community at large, but there's only 9 of us, and so, you know, we probably should invite some additional voices in before we start making substantial investments into the property.
Makes sense. Okay. All right, item 6E.
Excellent. Well, I will do that. So, the city is working with WES, so Clackamat County Water Environmental Services, on a good neighbor agreement. And so I'm handing out a couple of handouts. The first one is just a site map of the good neighbor agreement area. So because we have services that are provided within the city of Oregon City, and the negative implications of providing those services so close to town, I think the county is looking to offset that, mitigate it, provide opportunities for improvements in and around the plant area. So if you're unaware, and I didn't save a copy for myself, I think I have one in here somewhere. The plant is directly adjacent to the Cove property, and so the mitigation area that they're proposing is so the plant area is over here, just directly adjacent to the Cove and adjacent to the Clackamas River. The service area boundaries they're looking at is over into Gladstone, around all the way down to Sportcraft Landing and back up. So that's the project area that they're proposing. They had asked for an initial list, and again, this is a draft list, and I'll pass this around as well, of improvements that could be made within that area. The conversation has centered around a 10-year contract that would be signed, which would give the city of Oregon City roughly $200,000 annually to complete projects, and would give Gladstone, I think, around $250,000 annually to complete projects. So some of those things could be walking path improvements, lighting projects, sidewalk repair improvements, maintenance of certain areas. Really could be many, many different things. So the list that you have is kind of a first stab looking at our planning documents, kind of anecdotally knowing what is needed in those spaces, and just putting together, again, roughly the project list that could happen if and when an agreement is made between the city commission and the county for that project list. So this is, again, just an informative, letting you know we're kind of thinking in that direction. But as we spoke and discussed about the Clackamat Park needs, this would be, a funding source for a lot of those projects could happen through this agreement. This would not be out of our general fund. This would not be out of any capital funds that we have. This would be a separate pot of money that we would have access to $200,000 worth of improvements annually.
So John had mentioned that they used to dredge the channel, the Clackamas River, and since they stopped, that's what's creating the problem with the boat ramp. And I see you've got a line item here for Clackamas River gravel bar dredging. Is that, that the same item?
Yeah. They, and again, I don't know the full history of it, but we did have a permit to dredge at one point and did dredge, but it was an ongoing, regular occurrence that we were spending a lot of money to dredge, and it would build up again. So I am assuming they did, at some point decided not to continue that. We do have some issues with algae blooms in the cove area. When the water levels start to dissipate in the summer months, you really get not a lot of fresh water coming into the cove, and so improving the habitat and the water quality in the cove area, that could be something to look at.
Okay.
So can I ask, what is West getting in return for this offer to?
So so the agreement has goals as outlined in the draft IGA are to connect communities of Oregon City and Gladstone through improved recreational opportunities, such as pathways, parks, and trails, to enhance fish, wildlife, habitat, and riparian areas. 3, to create opportunities for collaboration and leveraging resources between the two cities and/or West. And 4, to enhance public knowledge on wastewater treatment and surface water management and what they can do to protect water quality through education and special projects. And so I think just an awareness of the work that they do and the importance of the work that they do is one of the things that they would like to see highlighted through these projects. Is they're funded through the WES, and here's the work that WES is doing, and they're a good neighbor in supporting the projects that the community wants to see.
So those donations or that transfer of money is annual? Is that what I heard you say?
Yeah, so it would be a 10-year list. Let's see, so they're looking at 2019 through 2028, approximately $200,000 in additional funding annually. So it'd be an annual contribution.
So
to
essentially,
the project.
we just make friends and they give us $200,000 every year?
Yeah.
Do they
It's a
have,
good deal.
I'm assuming you haven't done contracts yet, but have they mentioned anything about them having to approve which projects Oregon City selects? to spend that 200,000? Like, are there parameters,
That
conditions?
is an excellent question. We did, there is a draft version of the IGA, which I did not print, but I can send it out to the group if you're interested.
Yeah, I'd be
Yeah,
interested.
I'd like to see that, yeah, good idea.
And where do they get their money from?
Good question.
Providing services to residents, so.
Sewer.
Sewer, yeah. Sewer services.
Is this essentially a tax write-off for them then? Okay.
Probably, I don't, yeah.
Take the money and run.
Well, the thing is, there's never a,
Yes.
you wanna make sure that there's never a freebie, I mean. It makes me, I mean, maybe there is, but it seems like there's, you know, what do they want in return other than, you know, modicum of
It's a free
publicity?
lunch.
Yeah, and there might be a requirement of some sort for their permitting to, you know, federal regulations. I'm not positive, not my area of expertise, but I know that as an example, PGE, in order to have their licensing for providing services on the river, you know, for the dam, they have to do certain things in order to keep up their licensing, and so there may be a requirement to mitigate some of those things, and so for PGE, that may be, you know, providing the fish ladders and other access to the dam, and, you know, and for Wes, it could be that they have additional mitigation of, you know, we're putting, you know, gray water in essence, and again, not my background, but into the rivers, and there's additional, you know, noise and other things that are produced through the plant operations.
So it's a cover for them, so they can do business.
Yeah, so again, I don't, I don't wanna speak to their,
Yeah.
motivation for that, but yeah.
So every time everything overflows into the river, they can just say, oh, $200,000.
Does because you mentioned earlier about the algae blooms in the more stagnant area, water of the cove.
Yeah.
Is there any linkage to the overflow water potentially being warmer from the, and that going into the river and then it,
I think their outflow actually is through Clackamas Park and out into the Willamette, and not into the cove directly.
but if
Although
any
they
of
do
that
have-
water kind
Yeah,
of percolates. Okay.
yeah, I'm not sure. But
They've been involved with, since they did their plant expansion, I'm gonna say it's maybe been 20 years ago, but they've been closely involved with the city of Oregon City as well as Gladstone. And their basic purpose is they wanna be able to influence the buffer between their facilities and public space. And they understood that, at least that was the case, they understood that they didn't wanna have people complaining about whether it's noise or smell, and so they were very, very concerned about property that they didn't own and how that was going to be planned to be used. And I know that possibly is one of those ideas that they still, it's high on their priority list, and by giving this kind of money to the cities that they're willing to work with them on keeping those buffers, something that's compliant with what they're looking at.
Public relations and being a good neighbor.
Well, this would have a great effect on any type of Clackamas Park master plan.
Oh, yeah, yeah, we definitely, this is a funding mechanism for sure. for
Hiring a
some of those
contractor to
improvements.
put it together.
Exactly, do the public process,
Well,
first 200,000.
And what was the time frame on this? Maybe I missed it.
What was that?
What was the time frame on this? I mean,
I think they're looking for the 2019 fiscal year, so it would, I know they had a joint work session scheduled for last night. I have not had an opportunity to follow up on how that played out. I know they're wanting to move forward on it sooner than later.
Yeah, I want to see the fine print, of course, of the things that we're talking about, but, they're trying to be a contributor to the community rather than, taking. the
Yep.
Yeah, that's a good thing, whether it's mandated or not, but,
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
We'll
an
take it.
exciting
I was
opportunity.
gonna say
We'll
it's,
take
yeah,
So,
it's appreciated either way.
exactly. Okay, any other questions on this topic or comments? Okay, moving on to agenda item 6F, McLaughlin Promenade Survey.
So this is just really quick, just wanted to give you a heads up that we are working on conducting a topographic and property line survey at McLaughlin Promenade, and it will be over the next couple of weeks. So we'll get notification out to our adjacent property owners, but the property lines at the promenade are very close to a lot of the residences up along the promenade, and so trying to figure out what's ours before we start to move forward at some point eventually for site improvements. We've conducted the McLaughlin Kenema Trail study that was done recently. There are some things in there for improvements. Before we start to move forward with improvements, we wanted to make sure that we had a clear delineation of what spaces were ours and which spaces were the private side. So we'll, I'm sure, provide an update once we get information back, but at this point, that's all the information I have to share.
This could probably help us move it forward to becoming a charter park, status of charter.
Yeah, so that was one of, thank you for that point. That was one of the other deciding factors, was to really make sure we knew what the park boundaries were as we're dedicating public charter park.
Okay. Item 6G, general business.
So I had two items, unless there's other items that the group would like to discuss. As John referenced yesterday, and we'll have a full presentation in June, but the Parents of Murdered Children is anticipating moving forward with a capital project at the Mountain View Cemetery. They have approximately $90,000 in site improvements that they are anticipating to include walking paths and monuments for that Parents of Murdered Children monument site. So we'll have an update in June, but just want to make sure that you're aware of that process and those ongoing conversations. The other request that I had was from Bill, was to have an update on the enhancement grants that have been submitted to date. So I do have a short presentation. I didn't change the main slide. Okay, here we go. So I have a short presentation, just an overview of the enhancement grant process. So their goal is to support neighborhood projects that help fulfill the community's vision. Approximately $350,000 in grant funds are available through this process for 2019. There is a maximum of $50,000 per application. There is a in-kind or cash match that is required. A deadline for submissions was May 17th. I have not seen the full list yet, and so I just kind of have a general understanding of the ones that have submitted. They don't, sometimes they don't come to us for letters of support before they submit, and so once we see the full list, I'll have a little bit better understanding, and that'll be probably in the next week or so. The economic development staff monitor this grant process, and then they send out the information to all the affected departments, including parks, planning, public works. So the committee will be considering the proposals at their meeting on June 13th, and then the spending cycle starts July 1st and runs through June 30th of 2020. We have several grants that we know applied. Those include the Native American Perspective film, and that's through the End of the Oregon Trail. Clackamas Heritage Partners, the Oregon City on River Recreation Project, that is the Lower Columbia Estuary, I didn't bring, oh, there it is. Lower Columbia Estuary Partnership. Additionally, so that group is basically they take groups of folks out on canoes out into the river, talk about the environment, the river flow, introduce people to the water that maybe have not had an opportunity to go out on the water before. So typically students, they're reaching out to seniors as well. They have letter of support from the Pioneer Senior Center and are planning to bring out a grouping of our seniors out onto the river.
So it is an Oregon City group that's sponsoring, want to sponsor this?
It is the Lower Columbia Estuary. I think they're based in Portland, but they provide services for the Columbia, Willamette, any of the waterways that feed into the Columbia.
And they did ask for your support or letter, is that correct?
Yeah. Let's see, the other one that Wesley Lynn Park Artificial Turf Infield. So the Oregon City Youth Sports has applied. They're trying to do one field first, and then either next year or the year after do the other field, but to allow for extended playability. Hillendale Park Court and pathway lighting. So I think we've talked about that one quite a bit. The environmental stewardship at the Cemetery Canyon. So they had a grant last year and were very successful incorporating local youth into providing environmental outreach and stewardship at the canyon just behind the cemetery. They applied again this year and are planning to reach out to a different school and do the same thing. So very exciting, getting up to 300 kids at a time down in the canyon on given days. It's a little bit of a project. The Ladderette Park development, which this would be the last bit for that project in order to fund it and develop, and then Park Place Playground Replacement Project, which would be to replace both of the pieces of equipment that are up there currently. We had some fire damage to one of the pieces of equipment about a year ago, and were unable to replace it due to none of the playground manufacturers wanting the liability of adding on to that piece of equipment, which the manufacturer went out of business and it was so old that nobody wanted to touch it. So we have to do a full replacement.
Could I ask you, since they did come before us, I was more curious about the Hillendale pathway lighting.
Yes.
So are they asking for 50,000?
Yeah, so their request was for 46,500-ish.
And is that gonna pay for part of what you're
Yeah.
requiring as far as safety for the path to be built and lit?
Yeah, so that would be for the court lighting, and we are anticipating putting in matching funds through the SDC budget. So as we discussed at the last meeting, the interest of the group to utilize some SDC funds for those types of projects. So they're putting in I think around $2,000 of their own funding. The city's putting in SDC funds for the match, and then the grant funds of $46,000.
And that would, in theory, that's supposed to pay for I thought, was there a pathway, they're gonna be following an existing pathway, is that correct? Or they're taking a more direct route, as you had mentioned, that they could put, I mean, you didn't like the idea of the lighting in the court at night until they were able to,
Oh, yes.
be able to satisfy your liability issues of walking
Yeah, so that would
in the
include
dark.
pathway lighting as well as the court lighting. And working with PGE for the install. And so they would be PGE poles within the park. They provide the funding for some of the install work that's associated with it, so we don't have to pay for the posts or the masts. They do require us to do the trenching and pulling of the circuitry and those kinds of things for the electrical would be required. And then they would not be, so the court lights is something that would be fully encompassed within the grant, but the pathway lighting is, PGE would help support some of that.
Because they had their own separate grant, I thought, from the National Pickleball Association to do the court lighting.
They did not have a grant for the court lighting, as of right now. They did get a grant for, bleachers and additional, entry into the court areas. So they're doing some alterations to the fence line and, installing a concrete slab and bleachers, or in the court area. But yeah, lighting project, they didn't have a matching grant.
So I won't belabor this point any longer, but I was curious, and so this grant that they're asking for is going to establish some pathway lighting that satisfies your needs, our needs, to get safely to the court, but there won't be any any court lighting for another year
No, the court lighting would be included in the,
at the same time. Under this grant, or are there separate grants that they apply for?
under this grant.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, and so that was my full presentation, so I'm happy to answer any other questions if you have them. If not, those are all of my other general business items.
All right. Thanks, Phil. Any questions, comments before we move on to member reports? None? Okay. Member reports. Mr. Daniels.
I don't think I have any reports at this time.
All right. Very good. Eric?
No, I don't either.
Okay. Oregon City Parks Foundation, Ivy Pull. We pulled a lot of ivy. It was a great day for it too. Not a huge turnout, but we did good. We made really good use of our time, so I attended that. I'm gonna take another minute, and I just wanted to mention, especially to our new members, summer is coming up. Our busy season is coming up. So, we'll be pulled in different directions. There may be small committees or groups or attendance that's required. Jeff, thanks for stepping up for the RFP review. But I'd like to kind of think about the direction of PrAC, and what I would encourage or challenge everyone here is to visit different parks, even outside your community, even outside of Oregon City. So when you have an opportunity and you're near a park, I think it would be beneficial for all of us. Take a few minutes, go to another neighborhood, visit their park, and come back with what you think may be improvements, or what you would do if you would be able to make those improvements. If money was no object, what would you do? So I'd be interested to, little homework assignment for everyone. But again, the summer season is coming up. We have concerts in the park, movies in the park, a lot of things happening. So that's all I've got. Please.
Nothing to report.
Okay, enjoy.
Well, it's interesting you mentioned that, because I had decided to challenge myself to visit and walk every park this summer.
Great.
So I downloaded Google Maps for all of the parks so that I could kind of work out a process for this. And I was really kind of struck by the fact that we really cluster our parks together. So it's going to make it fairly easy to visit 2 or 3 at a time.
It's real easy. When I got on here, I knew the ones over a couple in my area, but I've gone to almost every one. Actually, it was when I interviewed, it was Park Place,
Park Place.
because I was like, I don't know where that is. So, you remember, I told you, I'm gonna find that.
And you did.
Yeah, I did.
Yeah.
That's the one I went in, that's that's my goal for this month, is to find Park Place. I have no clue
Oh,
where
yeah.
it is.
Yeah, but I know, well, that irritated me that I didn't have no clue, and I was just like, you know what, I'm gonna do that, and I got the opportunity to do it, and that was cool. So,
I'd really love to hear everyone's comments in the coming months as you progress. So I'd really like to hear that. So,
I do have something to include on member report now that I had a chance to reflect. It's about the Buena Vista House. And the stakeholders group, the Friends of, have had some fundraisers to help pay back a loan from the Parks Foundation. And as Phil can attest, we have authorization from the city commission to proceed in getting the electricity hooked up. And apparently the electricians have been in there to figure out, I think we were asking for a key to get in there, and it was also, we're looking at a probability of getting some National Historic Grant money. They were inside to be able to do their homework, the other Lisa, and so I think we're moving forward in a positive direction with that house.
really got to applaud the committee for that. Really great job. Yeah, so that's fantastic. So we'll get an ivy pull in though, I think.
Yeah, Atkinson.
Yeah, I saw the Trillium a few weeks ago, it was blooming, in the lower part. So, have you seen that, the Trillium? Yeah. There.
I had a quick question, this was off topic, way off. Who was that, our first person that spoke, Karen? Who was she with?
She's with the Laterette Army, and she's I think she's the chair of that group.
Karen Berry.
Yeah.
I don't know, maybe I missed it.
These are the Girl Scouts, she's the leader of the Girl Scouts that developed this plan, what, 2 years ago?
I'm thinking it's longer than that.
4 years ago.
I think it's 4,
years ago.
right, the process.
Yeah, to redevelop that.
I should have asked her when she
part.
was here, you know, she's asking us to do something, I have no idea who it is.
Oh, yeah.
So one of her
So-
daughters was a Girl Scout, and then there was other Girl Scouts when they first initially came before the city for their intent on what they would like to do. And fortunately, there was others who wanted to help, and Francesca was instrumental in that, getting funding going, grant writing. So yeah, she stuck with it.
Yeah, big project, not big size, but big project, yeah. It was the former swimming pool for Oregon City, yeah.
Take a hike down to Laterbett Park next time when you're out looking for parks.
There's a geocache there, or at least there was a year ago, and the cracking rock.
That's one by Jackson, right?
Yeah, close.
Yeah. No, I'm well aware of it, yeah, I drive by there all the time.
All right.
Okay, great.
I don't say all the time, but numerous times.
Often. Yeah, okay. All right, member, staff reports.
So the recreation reports you received through email.
Yep.
Philbert Run Park, just want to give a quick update. We have a grant presentation scheduled in Salem for June 19th. So we're hopeful that we are well received and receive some grant funds from the state parks department. Claremont Way property, we closed on May 3rd, so the property is officially ours. And I think, again, we'll start to move through the initial steps with PGE and Bonneville to make sure that buildability of that site, they seem generally supportive, just needing to go through some agreements with them for use, but eventually be able to build out hopefully trails and possibly even a dog park at some point.
What size, how many acres is that purchase?
It is 2.5 acres total, I believe.
So ideally, it's gonna be walking paths, basically, is that what the?
Yeah, so it'll be a linear park to connect, basically we have a trail that goes from Wesley Lynn Park down through that corridor and eventually would connect to the Newell Creek Canyon area. But if nothing else, at least would connect to Fred Meyer, and so you have opportunity to
There
connect from commercial corridor to your home if you want to get on your bike and ride over to Fred Meyer for some snacks. Burn those calories. I do have one other short item that I forgot to mention earlier when I was talking about the Woods Memorial Park. We are putting a new sign out at the park, which we kind of snuck it in over the last day, but we're invited out Tyrone's mother to come tomorrow morning, so we're anticipating doing a quick photo with her and invited her the Wrestling Foundation Board of Directors and then some members of the VFW to do a quick photo op in front of the new sign, and hopefully we'll be able to get some publicity for the park being developed.
Very nice. And one final thing I'll mention, Memorial Day, 10 a.m.
Yes.
Mountain View
thank you.
Cemetery.
I knew I was going to forget that.
So,
Gonna fly over at 10:15.
yeah.
Yes.
So if you can, please make it.
Yeah, it's very moving.
Okay. All right. I think that adjourns our meeting for tonight. Thank you, everyone.
So you let me know when the proposals are
Yeah, so I'll send you